all night long. Fancy helping some faces, young and old, to warm the hearts when it's snowing and it's cold. You're gonna have to find a crew, it can't be anyone. They'll have to be there by your side and do what must be done. So go, man, you know that you have it night through day. The pain you feel it to bring it on with the Archie County Band. Doubts come and some may never die. So I'll ask myself, should I stop before I try? No way, man, mistake, it has been said. I'm all in, so there's nothing I'll regret. But time is ticking and there's so much that's going through my mind. Will I make it? Yes, I will. Our spirits are entwined. So let's get this show on the road. I'm here, I'll stay and I'll carry the load to bring it on with the Archie County Band. But hold on a second now, I'm starting to feel the strain. Was it a bicycle? What is wrong with my brain? Is it the end of me? No, I must still believe. So I'm still alive, you see. Heck yeah, now I'm on my way. But let's stay focused, there's still a job in hand that we must do. Cameras start to click, we know we're creating something new. So go, Marty and Sarah and Mark and Matt, Owen, Smitty, McCrilly and Jamie and Lane in the Archie County Band. The Archie County Band. The Archie County Band. The Archie County Band. Good morning, folks. You are very welcome to Bandido Talks. You know, the Bandido thought, it's a fine morning outside. It's very sunny indeed. And, you know, a little story caught my attention because it's a story about health. I mean, we all acknowledge, folks, don't we? We all acknowledge that health is very important. If you don't have your health, I mean, you don't really have anything, do you? So, you know, I saw this extremely sunny day this morning. I get up, I do some exercise outside, I go out for a little walk, and I'm anticipating that it's going to get super warm throughout the afternoon. Now, the Bandido really likes the heat. He likes lots of sunshine. His skin can tolerate the rays of the sun. I don't burn easy. And so I was thinking to myself, I want to be out. In the heat of the day, whenever the sun is at its hottest, I want to be outside, basking, like a shape-shifting reptilian, lizard person in the sun. That's what I want to do. So I thought I would come on here and do a little early morning show, a little early morning live show. And you see, we all acknowledge, folks, that getting outside and getting your sunshine is very important. It's part of being healthy. Vitamin D, you know, people will say that. You need to go out and get your sunshine. You need to have the sun hit your skin so that vitamin D is getting synthesized. So we could make a good argument that getting outside on a sunny day is health promoting. Well, bejesus, folks, we've got a story all about health here this morning. Or is it all about health? You know, that's the thing. How many times, folks, do I have to tell you there's no such thing as a free lunch? There is no such a thing as a free lunch. Our story this morning is talking all about this new smoking ban that's coming into the UK. The UK is the world leader here, it would seem, when it comes to cutting the fags out of society. You know, if you're born after, you know, the 1st of January 2009, if you're born after that date, the 1st of January 2009, you will not be allowed to buy cigarettes for the rest of your life. It will be illegal for you to purchase cigarettes. I mean, folks, this is just great news, isn't it? I've watched the campaigners. I've listened to the campaigners. The anti-smoking campaigners. They've been saying, this is the turning. This is the turning of events. Society is going to become healthier. We're going to have the first smoke-free generation. The NHS, the wonderful NHS, the wonderful, super important NHS is going to have a big stress lifted off its shoulders. And you know, we're all going to thrive, folks, because this smoking ban that's going to be brought in, it's been approved by MPs. This is coming your direction, whether you like it or not. You know, if you're born after January the 1st, 2009, whenever you become an adult, you will be not allowed to purchase cigarettes. And everybody thinks this is great. Everybody's saying, isn't the government and the politicians, they're just, you know, they've got their act together. They've got their act together. They are looking out for your health. The government and all of these other people who do not know you, these strangers who work in the government, MPs, all of these people, they want you to get healthier. Really interested. They just want a smoke-free generation to make sure that you are healthier.
So, it looks like it's a story about health, folks, doesn't it? Just like me going outside later on. I've been outside this morning. I've got a good hour of sunshine. Maybe that's why I'm so full of energy here. The vitamin D has been synthesized. And I feel full of energy. I'm doing a show at 9:30 in the morning. And just like vitamin D is important for very good health, you would think reading this story, it's a health story, isn't it? It's about, government passing rules and regulations to make you healthier. Or is it a story about health? Because you see, folks, what did I say? There is no such thing as a free lunch. If you think that this is just some wonderful, piece of legislation that's going to be passed, if you think that, these strangers in the government who do not know you, I'm not saying they're bad people. They're just strangers. They don't know you personally. If you think that these strangers who sit in the government have just decided to do something for you because you're such a big wholesome chungus, if you think that they have decided, they woke up and said, you know what? We want to make our population healthier, so we're going to ban the purchasing of cigarettes and tobacco for anyone who is born after January the 1st, 2009. If you think that you've been given a free lunch, if you think that this is being done to just, safeguard or to try and make your life healthier, to try and make the environment in which you inhabit healthier, to make the people around you healthier, if that's what you think, if you think you've been given a free lunch, well, folks, for those of you who think that this is a free lunch, that, the government has just taken action and finally done something in the interest of the people. In other words, if you think that this is being done for you without something else being taken from you, because that's what a free lunch is. You're just given something and nothing has been asked in return. If you think that this is a free lunch, that you've been just given something, you've been just given this legislation to make you and all the people around you healthier, if you think you've been given a free lunch, we talk about on the show, folks, we talk about, the 12-foot pole. The 12-foot pole? I want you to conjure up an image in your head of a 12-foot long pole. Now, I want you to imagine this 12-foot long pole making a beeline for your arse. Now, if you had some intel, if you had some heads up that there was a 12-foot long pole coming for your arse, would you sit there and eat the donuts? Would you just, let's say some tempting donuts have been put on the table for you. Let's imagine you think you've been given a free lunch. In other words, you've been given some free donuts. And here you are at the table. Oh, yum, 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 yum. I'm eating my donuts. This is wonderful. I've been given free donuts. But while you're distracted eating the donuts, under the illusion that you've been given a free lunch, while you're in this distracted state, the 12-foot long pole is making a beeline for your arse. And if you don't pull yourself away from the donuts, and if you don't, take a step back and look and take a broader view of the landscape, then you are going to overlook the fact that there's a 12-foot long pole coming for your arse. And so if you keep, munching down on the donuts, before you know it, there's going to be an extraordinary pain up your arse. And you're going to be going, oh, Jesus Christ of Almighty, you'll drop your donut. And you'll say, gosh, there's a pain in me arse. And then you look down, and part of the 12-foot long pole is up your arse. And now you're in a pickle, because you have a pole up your arse. This is what happens, folks, when you think that you've been given a free lunch. Normally, when you think you've been given a free lunch, the free lunch is the illusion. You're being given the illusion that you've been given something for free and that nothing is being asked of you in return. It's an illusion. It's not real. It's not really a free lunch, but it's being portrayed to you. You're being given the idea, the perception that you've been given a free lunch. And why would someone want to give you the illusion that you've just received a free lunch? Well, if the donuts are put there on the table, placed on the table, and you start, munching down on them, well, now you're distracted by the donuts. You're not paying attention to the broader picture. And if you were paying attention to the broader picture, you would see there's a 12-foot long pole coming for your arse. And so you would put the donuts down and you would move out of the road. You would try to protect your arse from the 12-foot long pole. So folks, we're going to have a nice little article to go down through here this morning. For those of you who are not familiar with this entire thing, this whole smoking ban that's been brought into the UK, we're going to read out the article in a little bit, but I just want to make a few things clear. First and foremost, there is a smoking ban coming in for those who are born after January the 1st, 2009. Now, when I say a smoking ban, let me be very clear. We're going to see this in the article, but I need to make this clear now, just so that you understand exactly what it is that we're dealing with. It is not going to be illegal. Let me repeat, it is not going to be illegal to smoke if you're born after January the 1st, 2009. It will not be illegal to smoke. It will only be illegal for you to purchase tobacco. This is your first red flag, folks, that this isn't a free lunch. For all those people who are saying this is, landmark legislation. Oh, fucking hell, it is landmark legislation, all right. What's landmark? For all those who are saying it's landmark legislation because of the potential positive health ramifications, health benefits from banning smoking. Folks, smoking is not being banned. Listen to what I'm saying. It's not going to be illegal to smoke. You can still smoke as many as you want. It's only going to be illegal to purchase tobacco. So for all those people who are saying it's going to be a smoke-free generation, we're going to be healthier than ever, the NHS is going to rebound. How many times have we heard that? It's going to rebound. Very important, the NHS. Folks, if the MPs and the government were really serious about banning smoking, you know what they would do? They would ban the act of smoking. In other words, if you're caught putting a cigarette in your mouth, you are breaking the law. That's what they would do if they were really serious about, quote, getting rid of cigarettes. if they were really serious about improving the health of the next generation, they would make it illegal to smoke cigarettes. In other words, the act of smoking would be made illegal. That's not what this legislation is, folks. This legislation is simply making it illegal to purchase, to buy cigarettes. Big difference, folks. That tells you something interesting about the intention here. People saying that this is landmark because of what's going to happen to the health of the population. If it was really about the health of the population, then would you not just ban cigarettes? You know, there are plenty of drugs. There are plenty of drugs that have been made illegal, haven't there? There are some drugs. If, for example, if you're caught using cocaine, if you're caught carrying cocaine, well, you go to court and you probably go to prison. If you're caught carrying heroin, if you're caught using heroin, you're going to get in trouble. These drugs are illegal to use. They are illegal. If you're caught with a whole bunch of cocaine, you're in a pickle. You're not allowed to use these drugs. But here's the thing. Cigarettes, the act of smoking, you'll still, when this legislation gets fully passed, you'll still be allowed to go out in public and smoke cigarettes. You can't go out in public and start snorting cocaine. If people started to go out onto the street with visible bags of cocaine and they just sat at the bus shelter, passing the bag around, snorting their cocaine, doing whatever they do with cocaine, the police would arrive. The police would arrive and say, you're not allowed to have this substance out in public. You're not allowed to visibly have this out in public. You're not allowed to use this out in public. You'd get reprimanded by the law. It's not the same with cigarettes, folks. This legislation isn't going to ban the act of smoking. You'll still be allowed to smoke out in public. You're only going to be banned from purchasing cigarettes. So, if the people in charge of passing this legislation were really serious about getting cigarettes out of society, then logic would tell you that you wouldn't just ban people from purchasing. Because, folks, we can obviously see the problem here. Fuck me. Okay, you're not allowed to buy cigarettes. Well, you can just get somebody else to buy them for you. Now, what I will say is, yes, does this introduce a channel factor? It does. What's a channel factor, folks? We've talked about these before. Channel factors are basically obstacles that you put in the way of someone trying to achieve something. In other words, channel factors are obstacles that require someone to invest extra energy in trying to accomplish something. Let me give you a very basic example of a channel factor. Let's imagine you want to play the guitar. Now, are you more likely to play the guitar if it's sitting out on a guitar stand in your room, or if the guitar is packed away in its case and it's up on the attic? Are you more likely, what of the two options, are you more likely to play the guitar when it's out in the open on a guitar stand in an area of your house that you frequently pass? Are you more likely to play the guitar that way, or are you more likely to play the guitar if it's packed away in its case and it's up on the attic? The answer is very simple, folks. You're far more likely to play the guitar if it's out in the open on a guitar stand. Why? Well, if it's out in the open on a guitar stand, you have removed an obstacle to playing the guitar. In other words, you've removed a channel factor, also known as an obstacle. If the guitar is out in the open, and it's not in its case, and it's not up on the attic, that means all you have to do to play the guitar is pick it up. Dee 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 dee, and you can start playing. But if the guitar is number one in its case, that's the first channel factor, because now you have to go to the case and you have to open up the case and you have to lift the guitar out of the case. That's the first channel factor. That's the first obstacle that's requiring you to invest extra energy in accomplishing something you want to do, i.e. play the guitar. So that's the first channel factor. But the second channel factor is it's up on the attic, which means you have to go and get the ladder out and get up onto the attic and carry the guitar down from the attic into your room. That's another channel factor. The fact that your guitar is in its case and up on the attic, they are both channel factors. So, when it comes to you making a decision about whether you're going to play the guitar today, well, if the guitar is in its case and up on the attic, you might go, fuck, I have to go up onto the attic, I have to get the ladder out, Jesus, I have to take it out of the case, and then I have to put it back in the case again and put it back up onto the attic. Fuck, you know what? I couldn't be arsed playing the guitar today. But if you remove those two channel factors, it's in its case and it's up on the attic. If you take the guitar down from the attic and you take it out of its case and you put it on a guitar stand, you've now removed two obstacles, meaning you have to invest comparatively less energy in accomplishing what it is that you want to do, which is to pick up the guitar and play it. So channel factors, folks, are obstacles that require you and I to invest extra energy in looking to accomplish something. So, make no mistake, this legislation is going to introduce a channel factor. So, is it going to be more energetically costly for people who want to smoke? Yes, it will be. Because if people can't just walk into the shop and buy a packet of cigarettes, they are now going to have to invest extra energy in trying to conjure up a different strategy. In other words, they're going to have to go and talk to someone who the rules don't apply to and get them to buy the cigarettes for them, pay them for the cigarettes, and then in a more convoluted way they will get their cigarettes. It's not as straightforward. So true, I'm happy to say that the legislation will definitely introduce a channel factor. In other words, this new legislation will create an obstacle, meaning more people will have to invest a little extra energy. They'll have to, find a more innovative way to get their hands on cigarettes if that's what it is that they want. The goal that they are looking to accomplish is, I want cigarettes. But if you can't just walk into the shop and buy them, then you're going to have to get somebody else to do it for you, which means you're going to have to go through another person, an intermediary. That person's then going to have to go and do the buying for you, and you have to go through this convoluted process every time you want cigarettes. So look, a channel factor will be introduced. There's no question. And it's very likely that a whole bunch of people that otherwise would have smoked will either smoke less or not smoke at all because they literally couldn't be arsed going to the extra effort. Their energy conservation mechanism will kick in. And that's what this legislation will do. It will basically cause the energy conservation mechanism that exists in humans and in all animals to basically say, fuck it, I couldn't be arsed going to the extra effort to get somebody else to buy the cigarettes for me. So yes, some people will smoke less, and perhaps some people will maybe just stop smoking altogether. They'll use this legislation as the sort of straw that's broke the camel's back. Fuck, it's just too much hassle. That's because this legislation will act as a channel factor. In other words, it'll act as an obstacle. Okay, so that is true. I'm not going to deny that at all. So then you might say to me, but sure, isn't this good? There are going to be fewer people smoking. And some people might stop smoking altogether. They might smoke less. This is a good thing. Well, folks, look. This is now allowing us to arrive at an interesting point. Because, folks, what did I say at the start of the show? There's no such thing as a free lunch. Remember the example I gave you about the donuts and a 12-foot long pole coming for your arse? You still get to eat the donuts. So, this is the thing. I'm not saying there's absolutely no benefit from this legislation coming in. This is going to be a little similar to, remember whenever they banned smoking in buildings and in pubs? That acted as a big channel factor for a whole bunch of people because it forced people to have to get up off their arse and go outside and smoke. And that would have caused some sort of a meaningful decrease in the amount of people smoking cigarettes, because it was forcing them to go to extra effort. They couldn't just light their cigarette up in the pub or in their workplace or in the building. No, they had to leave. And that extra effort of getting your arse up off the seat and having to go outside into a designated smoking area, that was enough to cause a whole bunch of people to reduce the amount of cigarettes they are smoking or to quit altogether. This is something similar. So look, I'm not saying that the legislation is an absolute, the whole way down net negative. There will be some useful things come out of this. And just like the donuts, whenever you're given a whole bunch of donuts, you do get to eat the donuts. So you get to, have the pleasurable feeling of eating high-calorie food. So if someone gives you donuts, it's not as if they dangle the donuts and you don't get to eat them. No, the person has left the donuts for you and you can munch away on them. But it's not a free lunch. Those aren't free donuts. Even though you're getting to eat the donuts, they aren't free. And all you have to do is pay attention, folks, and there's actually a big cost that you could incur if you're not paying attention while you're eating your donuts. It's the same thing here. Sure, this legislation that's going to come into the UK, whereby anybody born after January the 1st, 2009 cannot legally purchase cigarettes, this will act as a channel factor. It will act as an obstacle. And it will cause some people to reduce the amount of smoking in their life and maybe to quit altogether. That's true. But folks, always remember, when you have to analyze anything, everything, folks, everything in life has benefit and cost. Everything. Every decision you make, every action you take, anything that anyone does, there is always going to be benefit and cost. Now, some actions and some decisions have much more benefit than there is cost. The cost is minimal. And sometimes it's the reverse. Some decisions and actions have an enormous cost and very low benefit. Sometimes it can sort of break even. And what is it that we're looking from life, folks? Whenever we're going to make a decision, we want there to be as much benefit as possible and as little cost. So whenever we have to analyze something, folks, we have to analyze it through the perspective of cost and benefit. So this legislation, we can see what the benefit is. Introducing a channel factor, it might get a few people to quit smoking or reduce the amount of cigarettes that they are smoking. That's a benefit. But I go back to what I've said. There's already a red flag, folks. And the red flag is, if you're really serious, if you are really serious about getting people to stop smoking because it's very important that their health, the health of the next generation, is considered. If your true motivation is health, if that's what the MP's motivation is, if that's what the government's motivation is, if it's really about health, then you know what you would do? You would treat cigarettes like cocaine and heroin and any other illegal drug. If you're caught with cocaine, you're going to jail. If you go down in the morning time at the bus shelter, or you just start walking around town with a big bag of white powder, and you start sniffing it, and you're just sitting there out, in public, visible, with your bag of cocaine, if someone reports you and the police arrive and it's found out that you have cocaine, you're in trouble. But you see, this legislation, folks, is not like that. You are still allowed to partake in the act of smoking. You're still allowed to smoke. The police isn't going to, if you go out in public after this legislation is passed, if you go out in public and you smoke, nothing's going to happen to you. Because the legislation's only dealing with the purchasing of the cigarettes. If you want to, you could get somebody else to buy the cigarettes for you in bulk, and you could have a big stash of cigarettes in your car and in your house, and that isn't illegal. You could drive around town and your entire back seat of your car could be full of cigarettes because you've acquired them from overseas, because you've got someone to send you the cigarettes. It's not that hard to do, folks. You could just buy, yes, it's channel factor, that's true, but it's not that hard to worm your way around this. You could get someone to supply you with an enormous amount of cigarettes. You could get a bulk supply of cigarettes ordered from some unregistered dealer. And you could carry those cigarettes around in the back of your car. It's not illegal. You're allowed to smoke still. So it's not illegal. And so that's the red flag, folks. Because if it's really about health, then you would ban the act of smoking. Just like you ban the public use of any of these hard drugs. If you're caught carrying a hard drug like cocaine or heroin, you're going to prison. You're going to court. If you're out in public fucking using cocaine or heroin, you're also going to be in trouble. If you're actually caught using it or snorting it, you will get into trouble. It's not the same with cigarettes. So, with that all laid out, folks, let's move on to the article. Let's just read the article. Let's see what it has to say, just so that we have our foundations nice and firm. So let me get the article up here. We're going to have a read at this. Here it is. You can see it up on screen. New smoking rules explained. So we've got where vapes are banned and tobacco rules for young people. So let's read a bit of this, folks. We're not going to read it all. It's a long article, but there's a bit, folks, at the end of the article. Because, I've sort of explained this already. We're going to read it out here in the article, but I've kind of explained this. But there's a bit, folks, at the bottom of the article. And the bit at the bottom of the article is why this is not the free lunch that you think it is. And we're going to get to that part of the article, but let me go down through the basics first. So it says here, you can see very clearly in the little subheading, this little bit here. Anyone born after January the 1st, 2009 will never be able to buy cigarettes legally. Notice the wording, folks. Buy cigarettes legally. It doesn't say you won't be able to smoke. You can still smoke. If you're born after January the 1st, 2009, you're not allowed to buy cigarettes, but you're still allowed to smoke them. If you can get them by some other means. First red flag. So, never be able to buy cigarettes legally in Britain under new plans approved by MPs. While new rules are coming into force on vapes and nicotine pouches. Right, I don't really give a fuck about the vapes and the nicotine pouches. That's for a different show. Now, here it says, look at this. Beautiful stuff, folks. The campaigners, Lord Jesus. Delighted campaigners have said an end to smoking in Britain is now, quote, inevitable after MPs and Lords approved a landmark ban. Leave it to the dipshit campaigners. It continues. Anyone born after January the 1st, 2009 will never be able to buy cigarettes legally in the UK under new rules set out in the Tobacco and Vapes Bill, which now just needs royal assent to become law. You gotta love a bit of law, folks, don't you? The next bit here, there's a fuck ton of ads in this. But stick with me. The government said the move, introduced alongside a set of sweeping new regulations on nicotine products, aims to create a, quote, smoke-free generation and eliminate one of the UK's leading causes of preventable death. Very honourable folks, aren't they, folks? Very honourable folk in the government. They're just looking out for your health. Now, let's read this bit here. Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who is really concerned about your health. Wes Streeting is really concerned about your health, folks. He said, quote, "This is a historic moment for the nation's health." Notice how we keep talking about health, folks. Health, health, health. This is a historic moment for the nation's health as the Tobacco and Vapes Bill ends its journey throughout Parliament. Children in the UK, it's all about the children, folks. Back onto the children again. It's a bit like Meta and YouTube, you know, whenever they lost in court. Social media needs to be censored too. Anyway, children in the UK will be part of the first smoke-free generation, protected from a lifetime of addiction and harm. Prevention is better than the cure. This reform will save lives, ease pressure on the NHS, and build a healthier Britain. All the little classic sound bites, folks, aren't they? Save lives, ease pressure on the really important NHS, and build a healthier Britain. Yeah, okay. Now, the next bit says, what a name, Hazel Cheeseman. Fucking hell, you can't make this up, folks. Ha! Hazel Cheeseman. Fuck me. Chief Executive at Action on Smoking and Health told the Mirror, "This is a decisive turning point for public health. The end of smoking and the devastating harm it causes is no longer uncertain. It's inevitable. And the focus now is on how soon we get there." Folks, doesn't this sound familiar? Sounds familiar if you watched our show on Meta and YouTube's defeat in court about how online censorship for minors is inevitable. It's going to come. You know, we're going to censor social media for minors. It's just inevitable. Sounds similar, folks, doesn't it? Similar rhetoric. Now, there's more bollocks talk like this, but I want to get to the real gold here. And this is where the real gold is, down here. Now, this man here, Andy Lullum, Chief Operating Officer at Verify My, said, quote, "Nearly 20 years on since the pub smoking ban, today's legislation will have a similarly seismic impact on teens." So Andy Lullum, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Verify My. Now, this is where you will now realise, folks, that this is not a free lunch. It's not really about health. The donuts have to be dangled in front of you to get you interested. Get a load of this. We're going to read out these 3 paragraphs here because they're just beautiful. Right at the end of the article. Now, let's have a read at what Andy's actually saying from Verify My. Andy, the Chief Operating Officer, he says this. "However well-intentioned these plans won't work without a robust and sophisticated approach to enforcement." Folks, read that with me. This line here. "However well-intentioned, these plans won't work without a robust and sophisticated approach to enforcement. Let's keep reading. Unlike rules on alcohol, the dividing line comes on date of birth rather than age, meaning those born around 2009 can expect to encounter checks for years to come. Let's keep going. It's another case where age verification will be required to ensure the law is enforced robustly. Let me read that again, folks. This is important. It's another case where age verification, I wonder how they're going to do that, will be required to ensure the law is enforced robustly. Let's keep reading. A fixed birth date ban sounds simple, but implementing and policing it won't be. While ID checks will be fairly easy to navigate for in-person or online purchases, people may not want to have to carry documentation proof well into their adulthood. And then here's the kicker, folks. Technologies like facial age estimation could be an alternative. But to accommodate the birth date requirement, retail systems algorithms will need to be frequently updated, arguably even daily. Folks, if you can't see what is happening here, you are a retard. I'm going to read that out one more time. Technologies like facial age estimation could be an alternative. But to accommodate the birth date requirement, retail systems algorithms will need to be frequently updated, arguably even daily. All right, folks, let me get my main screen back up. Let me just show you again the article. It's from the Mirror. Why is this not going up? There we go. So it's from the Mirror. You can go read it yourself. Don't take my word for it. Go read it yourself. Now, let me get the screen back up. All right. Folks, this is very obviously not a free lunch. This is very clear. The end of the article gives it away. Folks, the donuts are being dangled in front of you. In our analogy with the donuts and the 12-foot long pole, let's use that analogy. The donuts in this case is health. You're going to improve the next generation's health, the first smoke-free generation. The NHS is going to have less pressure on it, which is going to benefit you. Those are the donuts, folks, that are being dangled in front of you. In this case, the donuts are health. That's why I said at the very beginning of the show, when I made reference to me getting vitamin D this morning, is this a health story, folks? Is it? Is it really a health story? Well, you know what? You are trying to be given the illusion that this is one big health story. It's all about the children. It's all about the teenagers. It's all about creating a smoke-free generation. It's all about health. It's about making you, Wes Streeting. Wes Streeting is very concerned about your health. And you know, old Andy there from Verify My, he's really interested in your health too. Are they really interested in your health? You know, that's the illusion that you're being given. You're being sold the notion that this is a story about health. Folks, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Yes, will this legislation introduce a channel factor? Yes, it will. Will it make it more awkward for people to purchase cigarettes after they are born? Or when they are born after January the 1st, 2009? Yes. Does it ban you from engaging in the act of smoking? Absolutely not. This is completely different to you going out with your bag of cocaine on the street and snorting cocaine. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to engage in the public act of snorting and carrying a whole bunch of cocaine around with you, but for cigarettes, you will still be allowed to do that. You're just not allowed to legally purchase cigarettes. Okay, so If you think that this is just, it's for the health, it's for the health of the young people, smoke-free generation, less pressure on the NHS, health, health, health. Folks, look at what the end of the article says. In order for this legislation, folks, to work, what has to happen? In order to be able to actually pull this off, how is it that you're going to pull this off? How are you going to be able to ensure that someone who is born after January the 1st, 2009, isn't actually, how are you going to verify that it's them? You heard what Andy said. Are we going to force people to carry, their birth certificate around with them? No, you're not going to have to do that. No. What's going to happen is they are going to bring in facial recognition technologies and digital ID. Can you not see that, folks? That's what this is. This is a way to get the foot in the door. The donuts that are being dangled are the health donuts, we're going to call them. You are being given the illusion that this is a story about health, but it's really to get you on board with the idea that facial recognition cameras can be put all over your town, all over your city. Your face can be recorded legally. And it opens the door to digital ID, because how the fuck do you prove who you are? You're going to have a digital ID. Folks, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I'm not saying that one is good and one is bad. What I'm getting at is that there's no such thing as a free lunch. This is not exclusively a health story. Health is being used to get you on board with facial recognition cameras being put up all over your town and city. It's getting you on board with the idea that you're going to need a digital ID to verify who you are and when you were born. Because, folks, it's like Andy said in the article. The chief officer of Verify My, old Andy there, he said that for this legislation to work, it's going to need to be robustly enforced. And how's it going to be enforced, folks? Well, your face, your being is going to be analysed by facial recognition technology. See, when you go into the shop, do you think that these facial recognition technologies and digital IDs are only going to be used on the smokers who are looking to purchase cigarettes? Is that what you think? Do you not think that these facial recognition technologies and the digital ID might then spread broadly to the population? Folks, all you need to do is get the foot in the door. This is exactly like the story we covered here on the show with Meta and YouTube losing in court and online censorship being brought in for minors. Foot in the door. YouTube and Meta's defeat in court was a way to get parents on board with the idea that we are protecting the children. We're protecting the children. And when we protect the children, that means it's okay to censor the children. But that's getting the foot in the door. It's exactly the same thing here. Who is being used as the way to convince you that this legislation is good? The children. The children, the young generation, smoke-free young generation. So because we're looking to protect the children's health, you need to get on board with the idea that there's going to be a fucking surveillance state watching your every move. Because that's what's going to have to happen, folks. To enforce this, you're going to need facial recognition technologies in shops. You're going to need a way to verify what age you are. That's called a digital ID, dipshit campaigner and dipshit idiot who thinks that this is a good thing, who thinks they've been given a free lunch. Now again, I'm not saying that a surveillance state is good or bad. I'm not here to comment on that. But what I am here to highlight to you is that free lunches never happen. You never get a free lunch. This smoking ban in the UK, whereby you're not legally allowed to purchase cigarettes, red flag, because if they were really serious about health, they would just ban the act of smoking, which they have not done. This isn't a free lunch. This is a way to use health and children's health and teenagers' health and the young generation's health. This is being used. The health angle and the young people's health specifically is being used to get you on board with the idea that facial recognition technologies, in other words, cameras all over your town and city, is a good thing. It's getting you on board with the idea that digital ID is a good thing, because we don't want young people getting their hands on cigarettes. We wouldn't want people's health to get damaged. So, it's good. Yeah, absolutely. Bring in the cameras, bring in the surveillance, bring in the facial recognition technologies, bring in the digital ID. That's all good. You've got the thumbs up from me, because it's all about the children's health. We wouldn't want children getting access to cigarettes now, would we? That would damage their health. And, not only would it damage their health, but you see, it would also, put more stress and strain on the NHS. What a tragedy that would be. Folks, I don't care whether you think the legislation is good or bad. I don't care if you think facial recognition technologies, surveillance cameras all over the place, and digital IDs are good or bad. I'm not here to comment on either of those two things. What I'm here to comment on is, it's very clear to me that this story, this whole smoking ban, it's very clear that health is being used to get you on board with the idea that there will be surveillance cameras all over the place, in your shops and elsewhere, that there will be facial recognition technology. In other words, your face, you are going to be videoed without your permission. So when you're walking around town and you're walking into shops, your face and your body and your image and body is going to be taken without your permission. Video of you will be taken without your permission, and then finally digital ID, because of course you need to verify who you are. And this smoking ban is being used to get the foot in the door. It only starts with smoking, folks. It starts with smoking. And then you see, once the little surveillance cameras are in place, you see once the little facial recognition cameras are in place, and then see once the digital IDs are in place, well then, those things could be repurposed for other uses, couldn't they, folks? Because once the infrastructure is in place, it can be used for other things. Potentially. Now let me draw something else to your attention. Not only is this smoking ban, which, again, I'm a firm man, folks. Will the smoking ban cause some people to reduce the amount of cigarettes that they're consuming and perhaps even quit smoking? Yes, because it introduces a channel factor. This legislation will create an obstacle, or as we call it, a channel factor, which will cause people to have to invest more energy in order to purchase cigarettes. It makes it more difficult to just go into the shop and buy cigarettes, and that obstacle, that extra energy that people have to invest, will deter some people from smoking as many cigarettes as they've been smoking, and perhaps it may just cause them to fucking quit the stuff altogether. That is true. But folks, it's not all about health. This is not all about health. There's clearly another angle here. So not only do we have this idea that health, and in particular young people and children's health, is being used to get you on board with this legislation, because you're then going to say, well, this legislation's great because it's going to protect the health of my little Johnny. Little Johnny won't be able to just walk into the supermarket when he's an adult and buy cigarettes. This is great. My family's going to be healthier, less pressure on the NHS, blah-de fucking blah. Okay, that's what this angle is. That's what you're trying to be sold on. But very clearly we can see when we read the article, folks, this is a foot in the door for digital ID, for facial recognition technologies, and for surveillance cameras to be put all over the place, and for your body and face to be taken without your permission and perhaps potentially be used. Your data, in this case, your actual body, videos of you will be allowed to be taken without your permission. In the interest of, making sure that you're the right age so that you can't purchase cigarettes illegally. That's how it starts, folks. And then let's say that infrastructure gets put into place. The surveillance cameras are all now stationed across towns and cities. The facial recognition technology is across towns and cities. The digital ID has now got the foot in the door through this health legislation with regards to smoking. Once it's all got its foot in the door, then of course it can be repurposed for some other use beyond cigarettes and policing if people are the right age to be purchasing cigarettes or not. So not only is there that angle, folks, but there's something else here. There's another reason why this isn't a free lunch. Folks, you do realise that the government taxes tobacco. So you do realise that the government makes money from tobacco. Let me just give you a rough figure for how much money the government makes, the UK government will make each year on tobacco, or even any government in general. Let me just give you ballpark figures here. Governments can make, through taxation on tobacco, 10 to 12 billion. Let me repeat that. Government makes, through taxation, and when we add VAT on, government can make anywhere in the range of 10 to 12 billion pounds, dollars, whatever the fuck you want to use, on tobacco through tax. Now, folks, this legislation is basically saying, it's giving you the illusion that the government wants people to be healthier. In other words, it's giving you the illusion that we want to stop cigarettes being sold. So let's use our logic here, folks. If the government makes 10 to 12 billion through taxing tobacco, do you think the government is just going to say, oh, well, we used to make 10 to 12 billion, but that's the price we're going to have to pay for making our population healthier? Do you think the government is going to allow 10 to 12 billion pounds that it would otherwise make through the taxation of tobacco? Do you think the government is going to allow 10 to 12 billion to be just pissed in the wind and flushed down the toilet? Does that logically make sense, folks? Fuck me. Folks, we need to use our brains here. We need to use our logic. Of course, the government is not going to allow 10 to 12 billion pounds to be pissed in the wind. The government benefits financially through the taxation of tobacco. So the government has an interest in more tobacco being sold because it makes more money. So then you sort of have this, thing to analyze here whereby, hold on, so you're telling me the government is passing legislation to basically ban the selling of cigarettes and tobacco. But would that not damage the government's bottom line? the government's just going to lose 10 to 12 billion in a few decades without the taxation coming from cigarettes. Folks, do you think the government is just going to take that hit like an honourable gentleman? Oh well, I was making 10 to 12 billion on taxing cigarettes and tobacco, but no, the health of the citizens are more important, so I'm just going to, give up my 10 to 12 billion. Does that sound like that's realistically going to happen? You know that 12-foot long pole, folks, that I talked about at the start of the show, that's coming for your arse while you're eating the donuts because you think the donuts have been given to you as a free lunch? Folks, if the government is going to now damage the sales, basically damage the tobacco industry by not allowing the tobacco industry to legally sell its tobacco to people who are born after January the 1st, 2009, that means, at face value, that means the government's going to lose money. It currently makes 10 to 12 billion a year through taxation on tobacco. So if this legislation truly goes through and it's robustly enforced, that means the government is going to lose money through tobacco. And do you think the government's just going to say, oh well, there goes that money? Or do you think the government is going to look for another way to acquire that money that it's now going to lose? Might the government raise taxes elsewhere? And who do you think might be on the receiving end of such tax rises in the future to make up for the lack of money that would otherwise have came through taxation on tobacco? Who do you think is going to be left holding the bag of shite? Who do you think is going to have the 12-foot long pole up their hole? Who do you think the government is most likely to turn to and to increase their taxes upon? Who is most likely to face the brunt of increasing taxes from the government now that they're losing money through this legislation with regards to big tobacco? Folks, is it a leap to say that the money that the government is going to lose through taxing tobacco is going to be made up by taxing someone else, by raising taxes elsewhere? Who do you think's going to end up with the 12-foot pole up their hole potentially? That's right, you! Your taxes are going to go up, potentially. Because if we use logic, folks, logic would tell us that the government, like any business, no business is going to say, I'll just take the 10 or 12 billion hit to my income. What business would do that, folks? What business would say, I'm going to pass legislation that's literally going to damage my bottom line? What business would do that? That would be, self-harm. That would be literally cutting off your legs. Why would anybody cut off their legs? That would make no sense. So you're going to tell me that the government is going to willingly introduce legislation which damages their bottom line? They're going to introduce legislation that restricts the selling of tobacco. And government already makes 10 to 12 billion on taxing tobacco. But if there's less tobacco that's going to be sold, if this legislation is going to damage the tobacco industry, then that means the government will get less tax from big tobacco, which harms the government's bottom line. So the government is literally going to pass legislation that harms its own bottom line in the interest of the health of the population. Fuck me, folks. No business would operate that way. So obviously, logic would tell you that the money that government is going to lose, the government that was going to make money through taxing tobacco, that money that they are now going to lose, they are going to look to try and gain that money elsewhere. So if they're going to lose money there, they're going to raise taxes potentially elsewhere. And who's going to feel the brunt of those tax rises? That's right. You see, the dipshit campaigners who are saying, whoa, Jesus, we're going to have a healthier population. It's great. The NHS is going to have stress alleviated on it. It's wonderful. You see, those people are going to be munching down on the donuts, which are there as a distraction. And they're going to get a 12-foot pole up their arse. Wonderful. Wonderful for them. Folks, I don't know what's going to happen with this legislation. I'm not someone who can fucking predict the future. I don't have a crystal ball. But what I do know is that there is never any such thing as a free lunch in this life, folks. If you think that this legislation is being passed because the government wants you and your children and the younger generation to become smoke-free and healthier, you are a Class A retard. Because clearly, while this legislation will introduce a channel factor and an obstacle to purchasing cigarettes, it's very obviously, folks, a way to get the foot in the door so that facial recognition technology can be accepted among the population, so that cameras can be installed, surveillance cameras can be installed in shops. Because how else are we going to get this facial recognition to take off? Digital ID to verify who it is that you are, when it is you were born, because you know it would be too inconvenient to carry proof of documentation around with you. It would be so inconvenient to carry your birth certificate around with you. So you're going to need digital ID. And then once the foot is in the door, once we have the surveillance cameras with the facial recognition technology now placed in the shops, you know, is it ludicrous to say that these things could then be repurposed? And you know, once the foot is in the door, you start to see more of these little facial recognition surveillance cameras elsewhere. And before you know it, you are getting videos taken of you without your permission. And then, you know, we have the digital ID. You know, the digital ID, very important to verify who it is that you are, because we wouldn't want the children to be purchasing cigarettes if it's illegal. You know, we wouldn't want those adults who were born after January the 1st, 2009 to be purchasing cigarettes, because, you know, that would be illegal. So we need some way to verify who it is that they are. Bang, digital ID. And then, you know, we might need the facial recognition technologies as well, so that a video can be taken of your face to also verify who you are. And then, you know, once that infrastructure's in place, folks, then it can be repurposed for fuck knows what. Then, you know, it mightn't just be restricted to the enforcement of this smoking legislation, will it now? Is that probable? And then, of course, as well, folks, you know, we have this idea that government makes 10 to 12 billion a year through taxing tobacco. And the government has just introduced legislation that basically, on the surface of it, would seem to shoot itself in the foot. It would seem to, you know, hurt its bottom line financially. So the government is now going to start losing money because the tobacco industry is going to take a hit. It looks like this legislation is going to damage the tobacco industry. And so, does that really make sense, folks? Does it make sense that any business would willingly take a $10 to $12 billion hit or £billion hit? Or would it be more likely that, you know, the legislation gets introduced, they're going to take a hit, the government will take a hit with regards to taxation on tobacco. But if they offset it some other way by increasing taxes elsewhere, I wonder who's going to bear the brunt of those tax rises. I wonder who. It's probably the person who is munching down on the donut, distracted, while the 12-foot pole rams its way right up their arse. Folks, there's never anything that comes close to a free lunch. And I'm not going to really express my condemnation of the legislation, my approval of the legislation. I'm not going to express my condemnation of facial recognition systems, surveillance cameras that are going to come in so that they can video you, and digital ID. I'm not going to express any of that because you know what, folks? It's like I always say. What's going to happen is going to happen. I can't really do much about it as an individual on my own. But for analytical purposes, for our show today, this is a beautiful example, folks, of how there's no such thing as a free lunch. if you think this legislation is good, if you think it's great, fine. Just realize that where the benefit of this legislation comes in whereby there's a channel factor and it might reduce smoking rates and, get some people to quit smoking, while you could argue that that's a benefit, there are also some potential costs, such as digital ID, facial recognition technologies, and basically surveillance cameras starting to pop up all over the shops that you're entering into, all over the towns and cities that you're walking through. And do you think that data, do you think that information might get used for some other purpose other than smoking laws being enforced? Might it be possible that that infrastructure, those cameras, those facial recognition technologies, that digital ID, once the foot is in the door, might those things be repurposed for some other reason, for some other agenda? Is it a leap to say that, folks? And this is what I mean. This is being sold to you as a health story. And folks, it's not an exclusive health story. It really isn't. It's a story partly about health. It's a story also about taxation, about money, about surveillance, about digital ID, about technology. It's not all about health. And you need to bear that in mind when you're analysing such things. Now, this is coming into place in the UK. It's not a global thing. So again, folks, if you hear this and you think to yourself, I'm not happy with the fact that this legislation of banning smoking for people born after January the 1st, 2009, I'm not happy with the fact that this is being used as a way to get the foot in the door with respect to facial recognition technology, surveillance cameras, robust law enforcement, digital IDs, facial recognition technology that could be used for some other purpose, facial recognition technology and surveillance cameras that could be used to monitor what it is that you or I are doing. If you're one of those people who are unhappy that this legislation may act as a way to get the foot in the door, then that's fine. Move somewhere else. This is only coming into the UK. If you're not happy with it, then move somewhere else, because this is only happening in the UK. That's why I say I'm not going to express approval or condemnation one way or the other, either for the legislation or for what is potentially going to follow when the legislation is introduced. Because if I'm that unhappy with it, then I'll just leave the UK. If you're that unhappy with it, then just leave the UK. Then you don't have to worry about it. And so that's the thing, folks. Free lunches do not exist. This is not a soul health story. And when you're trying to make your decisions in this life, and you're trying to figure out, do I want to live in this part of Earth? Well, you need to analyse, folks, a story like this from this angle. Because this could provide, this is the lesson, this could provide some important information for you. You may think this is all about health, getting rid of smoking in the upcoming younger generations. But you may be looking at this and saying, I don't like the look of this. This looks like a foot in the door for policing, for surveillance, for facial recognition, for digital ID. It looks like a way of getting this technology to be accepted among the wider public under the guise of health and banning smoking. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact that there could be cameras all over town, cameras in all of these shops, that they're supposed to be there as age verification mechanisms so that people don't buy cigarettes when they shouldn't be. I don't like the idea that these systems could actually be repurposed and used in a different way for a different agenda that somebody else has. If you're unhappy, folks, move. Stop complaining. Stop bitching, whining, and complaining. Move. Go somewhere else on Earth where this legislation does not exist. This is confined to the UK. Now you may say, but it's going to spread. Nobody has a crystal ball, folks. Nobody has a crystal ball. That's you guessing. For now, if you're unhappy, stop whining, stop bitching, stop complaining, get your fucking shit together and move. if you're not happy with the way things are going on this plot of land on Earth. So anyway, no such thing as a free lunch, folks. Let me check our live chat. Nobody in the live chat. We've got no live chats. So I think that draws our show to a close. A very close, I should say. A close, not clothes. Close. Christ almighty. Too much vitamin D is coursing through the Bandido's body. It's a really nice day outside. Boy, I'm going to get so much sunshine today. It's going to be a great day, folks. But anyway, that's our show to a close. Drawn to a close, that is. Again, feel free to hit the like button. Give us a thumbs up. Get down into the comments section, folks. Let me know what you thought about the show. If you agree or disagree, leave your comments down there in the comments section. And then finally, folks, if you like in general what we do here at Bandido Talks, if you find it interesting, insightful, useful, or valuable in some way, then feel free to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. We are live, folks, every week in the studio. You're going to have to subscribe to get notified because we go live on Universal Bandido time, which means the Bandido does his live shows as and when he feels like it, on the days he feels like, at the times he feels like. Subscribe to the channel to get notified. Again, folks, we are also live over on Rumble. We had a great live show over on Rumble a few days ago. LGBTQ, anti-LGBTQ laws in Hungary. That's what we were talking about over on Rumble a few days ago. Use the scrolling black banner below. There it is over here. You can see it. To direct yourself over to Rumble. Subscribe to Bandido Talks over on Rumble. We do different live shows over there, folks. More political. More US-based stories. We were talking about the EU a few days ago. More political. Over here, it's a bit more random on YouTube, but subscribe to both channels. Bandido Talks over on Rumble. Bandido Talks here on YouTube. Folks, did you see our new little segment yesterday? Spanish Musings. We've got a new segment where the Bandido does shows only in Spanish. He only speaks in Espanol. We dropped that new show, the first episode of that new segment yesterday. Check that out on the channel. Spanish Musings. If you're someone who wants to learn a bit of Spanish, listen to a non-native speaker who doesn't speak too quickly, those are the episodes for you. And then finally, folks, scrolling black banner again, there it is. Head over to X, subscribe. Follow Bandido Talks over on X. We do a bit of written commentary, and again, you can get notified of any live shows that we have coming your direction. So lots happening on the channel, folks. Lots happening here on YouTube. Lots happening over on Rumble. Subscribe all over the place. That is everything from me this morning, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Friday morning, afternoon, or evening. Enjoy your incoming weekend, folks. And with that said, it is over and out on this sunny morning from the Bandido.